injustice food system. So I'm looking forward to talking to him. But first is JD Hansen. He's with the Center for Food Safety. Welcome to Food Freedom Radio, JD.
It's nice to be with you. I'm glad you're covering this issue.
Yeah, so I reached out because the Center for Food Safety partnered with the Consumer Union and the Environmental Defense Fund to host a webinar recently on lab-grown meat. And people can tune in to your website and hear that entire hour-long webinar. But before we get into those details, tell us a little bit about the Center for Food Safety.
The Center for Food Safety was formed 25 years ago, primarily to address new kinds of technology in food. And at the time, that meant genetically engineered foods, but it now means nanotechnology in food and cell-based meat culture and other kinds of synthetic biology now.
And what's your personal background? You've been with them for a long time, but what's your personal background?
Well, I, as an undergraduate, studied biology and ecology, and in graduate school, studied biogeography, basically the how systems work, and first came to Washington, D.C. to work for the Fisheries Service. And then I ended up going to work for a time for the United Methodist Church and started their climate justice program and their genetic engineering program.
Wow. And you've been with the Center for Food Safety for over 18 years, and you co-chair the nanotechnology group. So let's, what is lab-grown meat? When people use that phrase, what does it mean?
For the most part, what it means is some folks have biopsied meat out of animals. That means they take a big hollow needle and stick it into the animal they want to make meat from. And then most of the companies use what's called calf fetal serum. These are calves that are slaughtered, mostly accidentally, in the meat production process, and then their blood is used to culture cells. And to be fair to the companies that are doing this, the major ones say that they're going to get away from fetal serum and grow these cells in something else, but they're not exactly telling us what that something else is.
Well, and I mean, it's interesting, and it's also really scary to me. And now, before I had you on, I spoke to a very earnest, very scientifically bent person, and she said to me, don't say anything bad about lab-grown meat. Lab-grown meat is going to end factory farming. It's going to help with climate emissions, and it's going to provide protein for people who really need protein. And so I want to keep an open mind as to what this is. But one of the things I also think is that we need to be using the precautionary principle and really understanding what this is. And I would love to see this type of new technology operate under a human system of rules and regulation, and also a human system of love, maybe, and instead of a system of extraction.
Well, I mean, the first thing to remind everybody is we don't have to eat meat to live. That if you want to address climate change, a better way than having vat after vat after vat after vat of really energy intensive growth process the cell-based culture is going to be, eat vegetables. They grow well, and they suck up a lot of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere.
Right. Lentils,
So,
more lentils, more legumes, eating those and eating them from healthy soil. And some people are saying that this might be a multi-billion-dollar industry shortly. Are there any lab-grown meats? There's none on the market yet, though, right?
there is a sort of a chicken McNugget, not using the McDonald's brand, but a chicken nugget that is made in part from cultured chicken cells, is on the market in Singapore. It's mostly plant-based filler with some chicken flavoring, really, when it gets right down to it.
So how can people learn more about lab-grown meat?
Well, one, you can go to our website, centerforfoodsafety.org. We're going to be putting more things on, as we raise questions to the Center for Food Safety. The Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition. That's not us. We're not questioning ourselves. At the Food and Drug Administration and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They are now considering some regulations and how to label these products.
So, there's so much I want to say on this, but I mean, one of the things that I wonder about is intellectual property. I mean, a lot of the company, I think that no idea should be able to be. What are some of the issues around intellectual property and lab grown meat?
Well, the big issue is that in the U.S. we allow to claim as confidential business information the environmental effects of the product and the health effects of the product. And when I get documents from federal agencies, they're often just all whited out or all blacked out. They vary which way they do it. And we should do what the Europeans do, and require companies to disclose totally how they're doing something.
Yeah.
With respect to the environmental and health effects.
And I actually think somehow, and I'm not an expert on this, but somehow we need to be maybe even thinking about abolishing intellectual property. That you can't really own ideas; they're all interconnected. We've had changes, and I think actually the whole rules around intellectual property prohibit. They interfere with our ability to our ability to respond to our environment. The other thing I wanted to ask right now is what kind of lessons should we have learned from glyphosate? I mean, we know that when it was first pronounced, it was supposed to reduce chemical use, but it increased chemical use. It's been so damaging to monarchs. What type of lessons do you think you wish we would have learned from that technology use?
Well, one of the things we should learn from it is the Environmental Protection Agency had data from the companies that was forthright about the effects and approved it anyway. It just, and it wasn't until our lawyers and other lawyers were representing victims of glyphosate in court cases that they were able to get from the Environmental Protection Agency what should have been public from the beginning, which was the effects of these chemicals on damaging the environment and the effects of glyphosate on causing cancer.
And like one of the effects is that it hurts earthworms after several weeks. Earthworms are reduced by half in the soil. And so
Mhm.
having healthy, vital soil is the key to having a healthy, vital food system. And yet we've had a chemical dependent industrial food system where our soil is deeply damaged.
Yes. Well, some years ago, I was on a focus group for Monsanto. Um, right after I was at the funeral of one of my uncles who died of cancer, and I told Monsanto then, and this is 1986, so it was a long time ago.
Mhm.
I told Monsanto, I'm not your problem. Your problem is at my uncle's funeral, 400 of your customers thought you had killed him.
And yet the stuff is
And
still sitting there on the shelves. You walk into big box
it's,
stores, it's just sitting there. 1 billion pounds of pesticides are being used right now, despite all the evidence we know.
well, and, and in neighborhood after neighborhood, it's being sprayed, on the cracks and sidewalks just to kill the weeds that are coming up. I mean, it's crazy.
It is crazy. It's totally crazy. Let's say that. And I mean, there's some news on the genetically engineered, and so now, despite not we're not learning the lessons, we're actually moving on to genetically engineering other life forms like
Yep.
animals and plants. So tell us what's going on in that area.
Well, the for about 20 years, the FDA has been regulating genetically engineered animals, mostly for research purposes. And then about more than 15 years ago, they started approving the genetically engineered salmon that they approved about 5 years ago, and we had to take them to court because it did such a poor job of the environmental review that the Ninth Circuit Court in San Francisco ordered them being the FDA, to completely redo their endangered species assessment on the fish and their basic environmental assessment. Unfortunately, the court did not order the product off the market. But fortunately, the company's had such a huge problem in producing its fish that almost none of it is being sold.
And I mean, that's
So
because they're releasing genetically engineered mosquitoes now in Florida.
they are, and we've been working and they want to do it in California, and at least the California Department of Pesticide Review is taking a more deliberate approach than the Florida Department of Agriculture, which regulates it in Florida.
So I'm just going to say this out because I mean, it can feel sort of overwhelming because I really wish our species would slow down and focus on respecting other lives, not just trying to figure out how to make money from it. And tell us a little bit more about what you see in the future and how people can learn more about these issues.
Well, in the future, I do think there will unfortunately be some kind of cell-based meat and even more likely seafood on the market. The reason I say more likely seafood on the market is that it's easier to grow some of the cold-blooded species than it is warm-blooded species. What we're going to be pushing is to make sure that it's not genetically engineered to keep growing, and so the other thing that's likely is that we will see some kinds of of cattle and pigs that are genetically engineered on the market. Ironically, I don't think we're going to see genetically engineered chickens on the market. They're so inbred, it's hard to engineer
Well,
more.
it's complicated. We'll be paying attention. J.D. Hansen from the Center for Food Safety, and that's at the centerforfoodsafety.org. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking with to Jim Embry. You're listening to Food Freedom Radio on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Great. Well, thank you so much, JD.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Have a great day.
Appreciate you. Right. And,
yeah. Well, it sounds like, it
guest.
sounds so complex and, oh God, I don't know how to put the brakes on any of this stuff. It was really, well,
if I've been useful to you and you want to call again, I'd be happy to be on again.
Great. Well, thank you so much, JD.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.
Okay. So it's 12:45. I think I might as well call him and see how it's going.
Sounds good. Are you calling on your cell phone?
Yeah, I might just give myself a little. Oh, yeah, because then they're going to go on the landline.
Yep.
I might take a breath.
Sounds good. Maybe they'll call in the next few minutes anyway.
That's true. Isn't that interesting, though?
Yeah, definitely.
Jeez.
Crazy stuff.
All right.
Think we got him now?
Yep.
AM 950 radio.
Yes, good afternoon. Jim Embry here.
Hi, Jim. How's it going? This is Laura.
Yes. Oh, it's lovely. Can you hear me well and hear us?
I can. I hear a little bit of an echo. Do you hear that, Brian? Brett?
Yeah. If it's on speakerphone, would you be able to take it off? Typically, we don't get the best quality with speaker.
Let's bring you to another room and tell them we'll call them back.
Okay.
We'll call you back.
Sounds great.
Right back.
All right.
Yeah, it's just
There we go. Let's try it again. All right, let's try now, Laura.
Hi, Jim.
All right.
Oh,
Hold
hi,
on one
Karen.
second.
Thank
I'm
you
gonna
so
hand
much
the-
for your help.
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Hi, Jim.
Now how we doing?
Hey, that sounds
Okay.
awesome.
Does
So-
that sound better?
That sounds
That
great.
was like some kind of a gecko in the sound, right?
Right. Yeah, it can
Yeah,
sound kind of
yeah.
hollow. So
Yeah,
So-
I saw a bunch of them when I was in Hawaii. They were everywhere. Thank you,
yeah,
dear.
yeah. So I'm ready to go whenever you are.
Hey, rock
Hey,
and roll.
Rock and roll. Did you get the email that I sent you with the questions earlier?
Yeah, I did, but I didn't have time to really go through it. We were
No
they-
worries.
They were dragging my ass. I tell you, from hither and yon. Okay. They said, well, he ain't got much ass left anyway. If we drag him really good, when we get home,
Right. Well, I'm ready to go. You'll hear music
Alrighty.
and then I'll introduce you and we'll just
Okay.
go with the flow.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right, here we
Thank
go.
you. Welcome back to Food Freedom Radio. I'm Laura Hedlund, and joining us now is Jim Embry. He is traveling the country preaching about a joyful food system. That's very different than the GE food system we were just hearing about in the last segment. But his roots run really deep. He helped start a co-op 50 years ago. He founded Sustainable Communities Network. He's featured in the book We Are Each Other's Harvest, celebrating African-American farmers, land, and legacy. And he's also with a Slow Food. So welcome to Food Freedom Radio, Jim.
Oh, I'm just blessed to be here on the phone with you all and all of our listeners. It's just an honor and a blessing to be in the Twin Cities, visiting friends, old friends, new friends, and I always love speaking with the media.
Yeah.
So I'm again just welcome all the folks who are listening in, and we know we're going to share. We hope a few gems, meaning GEM and JIM. Gems with folks who are listening in.
Jim, GIM. Well,
Yes.
joy, the power of joy and justice. I just love it. I love the phrase. So tell me about your journey that you're doing here.
Okay, absolutely. Well, as you know, I'm on this what I call this joy and justice journey in June. I left home May 28th. And the plan is to be back home actually around July 3rd, so about a month. And I have been, I will have covered in this month journey of about 25 cities, 15 states, about 12 or 15 slow food chapters, 8 or 9 food co-ops. I'm in a co-op now here. Thankful for the Seward Co-op here, allowing me to use their office space. Also about 20 members of my family, 3 children, in-laws, cousins, niece and nephew, and a bunch of food justice organizations has all been part of this month-long journey. And first of all, I come out of a family culture that was committed to this theme of joy and justice. So the idea of going on this month-long tour isn't anything necessarily new for me. Again, I come from a family who are what I call agrarian intellectual activists.
So
and we kind of,
So let's go to like your great grandfather. Your great grandfather
Yeah.
fought in the Civil War. So tell us about him.
Well, and actually we had 3.
Okay.
Okay, we had 3 great granddads fought in the Civil War. 2 of them were brothers. okay, and two on my mom's side and one on my dad's side. The brothers were Jackson and George Ballou, and then their friend on my dad's side was Lewis Gilbert, who had three. And of course, they were in an enslaved condition. And when the call went out in 1864, maybe a few months before that, when Lincoln finally agreed with Frederick Douglass to allow African American men and women to fight, then as we know, some 180,000 plus black men and women enlisted. Some ran very joyfully, okay, to fight because they knew that fighting meant the freedom, the potential freedom of themselves, their wives, their children, their moms, their pops, their children, and so forth. So, but one of my Jackson Ballou died in the Civil War, early in the war, and his brother and Lewis were in the same regiment, which was the 114th Regiment, and they left Kentucky. Out of Kentucky, some 28,000 black men and women enrolled in the Union Army. Now, I say women because, of course, Harriet Tubman was a well-noted by then freedom fighter. Got folks freed, going back and forth. But she was also regarded as like a spy for the Union Army because she knew the terrain so well. Some of the black women wanted to fight, and they disguised themselves as men. And there are stories about that.
It's such a
But anyway,
fascinating history. And I know one of the
Yeah,
little
it
things,
is.
there's so much I want to cover, but one of the things you were
Yeah,
saying
go
at the
ahead.
event I was at is that Harriet Tubman had an intimate knowledge of the soil and the plants and the stars.
Yes,
And
yes,
that
yes,
connection, that
exactly.
sacred connection with the
Yes,
land,
yes,
which is the
yes,
source
yes.
of joy, perhaps.
Oh, most certainly, most certainly. I mean, if you're eating and finding water, you're joyful. Okay. I mean, when you have, if you birth a child and they come out and they're eating either breast milk from the mom or whatever, what they might be crying, and okay, well, hey, get them babies, put them to the breast, and they'll be joyful. Okay. So food has been that sense of not only sustenance and nourish, but also joy since our evolution as a species, and of course since birth. But yes. So again, two of the grandfathers, that was George Ballou and Lewis Gilbert, were in the 114th Regiment, and then they were the ones who also went to Virginia that combated with General Lee and his army, were able to surround him and then force his surrender. And then these two same great grandads were there when Lee surrendered at Appomattox Courthouse. Then they were also shipped the very next couple of weeks or so to Texas, Galveston, Texas, to protect the border, but more importantly, to try to defeat the last remaining Confederate armies that were in Texas. And so they were there a month before General Granger came in. And I maintained that, yes, let's recognize General Granger when talking about Juneteenth, but let's also lift up these some 10,000, black troops that came in there a month before Granger came in, that gave the city, a new sense of peace. So again, at that Juneteenth, talk about the joy of folks, our folk who were enslaved, and you're seeing troops come in and say, look here, you all are free. I mean, tremendous joy, jubilation at that, what we tend to call Emancipation Day. So again, so those great granddads carried with them that sense of joy and sense of responsibility fighting in the war that came back home to where I live now. And that culture, I call it the agrarian intellectual activist, because one of the sons of those great grandfathers wound up going to what's called Berea College in Kentucky in 1879. That's why I say we've also been intellectuals for all these years. And then that great grandfather, name was Don Carlos Ballou, was good friends with the likes of Ida B. Wells, Mary Church Terrell, W.B. Du Bois, and George Washington Carver. And they invited, he was part of this black farm cooperative, black business league, and, of course, churches and schools. He taught schools. And so they were all, so they brought them in the 1915, 1919, what was called back then it was called the Colored Chautauqua. And so that was those kind of connections, again, with our folks and the folks like Du Bois, Carver, and Ida B. Wells. So the essay you mentioned, and what I call it the harvest book, fully titled "We Are Each Other's Harvest." The essay that I wrote in that book kind of describes that kind of family history. I just feel again very blessed, and thank you for allowing me on this wonderful radio show to talk about my family.
Well, we're
'Cause
grateful.
my being here today is because of those folk who fought, died, survived. That's why I'm here today.
And can we learn joy from those struggles?
Well, absolutely, absolutely, we can learn it in a whole variety of ways. Again, you know, so this campaign of this month long Joy and Justice journey, in many ways comes from the slow food uh, slogan that we developed about 4 or 5 years ago when we were writing what we call our Equity, Inclusion, and Justice Manifesto, and I was probably the primary author of that document. And we were wanting a way to get that manifesto out to all of our local chapters in a big campaign. So we thought, wow, let's create a campaign to roll out the manifesto, but we'll call it Joy and Justice. So oftentimes people think that when you're in the struggle, when you're in the movement, when you're protesting, when you're trying to make change, it's not joyful. But for me, if it's not joyful being part of that, then I couldn't do it for the last 60 years. You know, I began as a 10-year-old as a member of what was called the Congress of Racial Equality, CORE. My mother was the local chapter president. So for her, she thought it was normal to have her two sons. I was 10, my brother was 13, as part of CORE, and we were on picket lines and weigh-ins and being cursed out and spit on and whatever else when I was 10 years old. But even within those experiences, you know, we would sing songs, you know, all the various kind of spirituals, you know, wade in the water, go down Moses, we shall overcome. And those kind of songs would lift up our spirit, okay, and would create this sense of joy, this sense of collective courage that our friend Jessica Nimhard writes about in her book about you know, cooperatives. So those songs, prayers, and just the camaraderie of working together and struggling together are elements of joy. And if you're out there in the movement and you happen to get, you know, a change, you happen to get a law passed, you happen to break down the walls of Jim Crow and black codes, or like in Galveston, if you happen to be able to come in, as say as a black soldier, and tell your members of your cultural family that, look here, y'all be free, y'all be free. I mean, it's joy even when you speak the words and when you are fighting for those kinds of freedoms. There's a joy in that. And it's also a joy in receiving those words that, yes, we've been enslaved for almost 300 years, but now we've had this thing called emancipation, this thing called freedom. So there's a whole joy wrapped up in all of that. Absolutely.
So, I want to. This joy is also connected to Earth and having a sacred relationship with soil, rocks, plants, with reality.
Well, again, if we understand the life on the earth, for all of life, all earth beings, you know, earth has given birth to all that is, okay? Has given birth to all that is. So even within just that manifestation of giving birth, what we call evolving, you know, out of, you know, this earth of water and rocks and one-celled organelles and multicelled and aquatic life and plant life and reptiles and mammals. So there's a whole joy within this whole 4.5 billion years of Earth evolution. Okay, that's a source of joy, just in terms of how the life and the great diversity. So since we come from the Earth, okay, we're made from the soil, the compost, the dirt, people call it. We're made from the water. We're made from the rocks. You know, we're made from the air. We're made from the sunshine. So yes, I mean, that's the source of life, which is the source of joy, just in and of itself, just by itself. And as we spoke last night, when we were over at the Frogtown Farm, we're talking about that because we're made from the dirt, from the compost, and all that's in the soil, we're made from the water. Then when we touch it, we're touching what we're made from. And when we do that, then human beings have for, again, thousands and millions of years have done that farming, done that touching the soil, being in the water. I'm a scuba diver, okay, and we all spend 9 months in water, so we all have this sacred connection with water and soil and air. So when I'm out in the water scuba diving, I feel peaceful, I feel joyful, because I'm literally in the womb of the mother, meaning earth. I'm in the womb from which life evolved. So for me, that's a joyful experience. And when I'm in the garden, it's joyful. And I've had, like you, maybe I've had experiences pretty much my whole life of seeing the joy when you're out there in the garden and you're working and you're planting things. You take a seed and you put it in the soil, and then days go by and the seed sprouts, and you say, wow, look what I did. Look at that seed. And then when fruit comes along, you say, wow, it's gone from a tiny seed to this plant. I was just earlier over here at one of the gardens for the kids, and they were showing me some tomatoes. So there's a joy in watching the plant grow, knowing you put it in the ground. There's also a joy when that tomato gets ripe, that watermelon gets ripe, and you get to eat it and savor it and taste it. I mean, that's a joyful experience.
And there's so much power in that joy.
Of it, let alone and the growing and all that. So in my view, then the joy around the idea of garden connection, farming, and whatever extends from the whole system ought to be joyful.
So the whole system ought to be joyful. On that note, Jim, we're going to take a little break. We're going to come right back, and we're going to talk.
Right ahead.
When we come back, we're going to talk about all the hats you are wearing on this journey, and everything from Ujamaa Farm Seeds to Slow Food. So you're listening to Food Freedom Radio. I'm Laura Hedlund, and joining us from Seward Co-op is Jim Embry. Thanks so much. All right. So, boy, we're just going to take these different hats and kind of talk about it there. I think I might start with the fact you're calling from the co-op, and then you helped start a co-op 50 years ago, and then I'll do the seeds and the book and Slow Food, and we'll run out of time.
Oh, yeah. We do.
But it's good. Great.
Oh, yeah.
All righty. I'm ready, Brett, when you are.
All right, stand by. Here we go.
Welcome back to Food Freedom Radio, and we're talking with Jim Embry, who is on a worldwide, is on a national tour about joy and justice, calling us from the Seward Co-op, and you actually helped start a co-op 50 years ago. You want to talk about that a bit, Jim?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Back in 1972, I joined in with about 15 other folk or other families. And then we decided, for a variety of reasons, to form a buying club, and we named it Good Foods. And that was 50 years ago. And for me personally, part of the sense of purpose and willingness to join a co-op was, at that time, my wife and I had our first child in 1971. And all of our kids, were breastfed. But part of our concern was getting access to just better quality food back in 1971. And we recognized in the traditional grocery stores, it wasn't quite that available like how we wanted it. So we thought, wow, then let's join in with these other folk. And many of us were folks who were either students or maybe staff at the University of Kentucky. We kind of came together lose my voice here. Excuse me.
Yeah, we can give you a little bit of a break because I wanted to also talk about. I mean, I think joy and cooperation they kind of go together, and I'm not sure how, but how does joy and cooperation? I mean, maybe it's our natural selves are naturally joyful. Do you think joy and
Sure.
cooperation go together?
Well, sure. Yes, absolutely.
Should
I
we
got
take a
drink
bit of a
some this.
break? We can take a break
Yeah, let's do
since
that.
yeah, let's do a
do that.
break.
Let's do that. Yeah, let's do that.
All right.
So you might just go back. Of course, you can always. We're close enough music wise, aren't we, Brett? So
You could probably do here. I'll play it for you.
yeah, I
Start
think
for,
we'll.
I'll have you
Yeah.
re-ask
We'll
the
take it
question.
right. I'll take the whole coffee now because there's actually a lot I want to still get in. Are naturally joyful,
Why don't we
Yeah.
start with-
and
So
I'm
let's-
not sure how.
let's
but
take right
how
before
does
we start
joy and
coughing.
cooperation. I mean, maybe it's our
Okay,
natural
good.
selves
Good.
are naturally joyful. I can do this one again. So
How about right
Mhm.
there where
My
you're
voice
talking?
here, excuse me.
yeah, we can give you a little bit of a break.
Not there. How about
In 71, and all of our kids, were. But part of our getting access to these other folk, and many of us were folks who were either students,
I think you asked
Right
the
here
question
with
back.
either students.
Students. Okay.
who were
Yeah.
students. Yeah.
All right. So I'll have
Yeah.
you chime in right there, Laura.
Yep, I will.
Start it up. All right. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
So you helped start the co-op because you wanted healthy food. But is there also a connection between joy and cooperation, Jim?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It sure is. Let me mention, however, real quickly again about family. I come from a family of folk who, after the Civil War, again, were part of it. Some of them were teachers. All of them were farmers, and they formed, even back post the Civil War, these black farmer cooperatives and the black teacher associations, which are also cooperatives. So I come from a long family tradition of being involved in all different forms of cooperatives. So when we met and wanted to work on this food co-op, that was natural for me to have the tendency, that's this sense of willingness to join in with other folk. While other friends of mine didn't have a tradition and couldn't figure out why is this black guy, with big old afro and whatever, joining in here with these other white hippies. But we did that. So yeah, so as I was saying last night around the idea of cooperative, I mean, again, around my family, we made quilts together, for example. We did barn raising. We did all kinds of things around this rural black community that were about solidarity economy, mutual aid of all forms, or what we call cooperatives. And there was tremendous joy. The house I live in now, the living room, the aunts, the grandmamas, and the women in the family would sit around with these rags, we call them rags, and make quilts. And they would laugh and talk, and giggle and make these beautiful quilts. That was a cooperative.
Yeah.
Okay? So yes, so in my view, a cooperative is simply a means for humans to imitate and mimic nature, to imitate how the earth works. The earth works through cooperation, reciprocity. All these different kind of systems are in place, from the system of pollination of plants and animals and the sun and all kind of things, coming together to produce these flowering trees and plants. That's a whole system that we call a cooperative. The Underground Railroad, okay, of folks with these different Underground Railroad sites and people like Narrett Tubman, other folks leading folks to freedom, that was a system of cooperatives. And there was tremendous joy when you were able to find your way and escape and find these, these safe houses, that were these houses, systems of people cooperating. There was tremendous joy in that. So yes,
yeah,
I think that's part of, I think humans, are social beings, and we have our most points of happiness and joy when we're cooperating together.
And you're also featured in the book "We Are Each Other's Harvest," and it's a collection of different voices. And in the 1920s, there was over 1 million Black farmers, and today's there's less than 50,000. So, tell us a little bit about that book, because you're and why you think that the cover should be as iconic as Rosie the Riveter.
Most certainly, yes. This book again was a book that was written and even edited and invited people like myself to write an essay by Natalie Bazile, different, who lives out in San Francisco. As you know, her first book was called Queen Sugar. She spent 10 years writing that book about her family traditions back in Louisiana as raising sugarcane. And then she couldn't find a publisher, and she was out there one day at a Black Women's Writers workshop, reading from their various works. And some lady who works with Oprah Winfrey heard her read and said, "Wow, this book is fantastic. I think Oprah might be interested, okay, in listening to your book." And Natalie said, "Yeah, everybody know Oprah. Matter of fact, she's a friend of mine too, okay." She didn't quite believe her. And she said, no, here's my card, okay. Let me get back to the office, and we'll give you a call and have a meeting in a couple of weeks, and you can come in. Well, the rest is history. She went in and read for Oprah. Oprah loved it. And as you know, then Oprah Winfrey and Ava DuVernay bought the rights to that book, and it became a TV series. So her book went platinum, and then HarperCollins a couple of years ago approached Natalie and said, "Hey, your first book was fantastic. We want to give you a contract to do another book," and they suggested that maybe the topic might be more, anyway, it was a book that would be about Southern Black farmers was the initial kind of theme. And as she went around and thought about it and talked to people, she opened it up where it's more about nationally Black and brown farmers. So I got invited 3 years ago due to we had a mutual friend named Melanie Edwards, who I had met at the Black Urban Growers conference in Raleigh-Durham that fall. And then Melanie said to Natalie, "Oh, I know a guy. I met a crazy ass guy, Jim Embry, at a conference, and he has a great story about his great grandfather and George Washington Carver and boys and Ida B. Wells that ought to be in the book." So I got invited to write an essay, and much of the book Natalie kind of goes around the country and like interviews people who are farmers all around the country, and beautiful pictures in the book are pictures and poems and just wonderful descriptions of families who have endured and survived, and it kind of tells their own family legacy and their love of the land and love of family and love of growing things. And the title of the book, again, as we know, is called "We Are Each Other's Harvest," which is actually a short phrase out of a poem by Gwendolyn Brooks, who I knew from going to Chicago often back in the 70s, a dear friend. And then Gwendolyn Brooks was writing that poem about her love and her friendship with Paul Robeson. So that title has that kind of significance and legacy.
Yeah, Jim
I think
Embry, it's so important. We're like down to our last 3 minutes. I just want to make sure that we tease out some of the other stuff you're active in, like slow food, and also, am I saying it right? The Ujamaa farm seeds, Ujamaa seeds. So
exactly.
Just briefly mention how that's all connected.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So on my journey, again, the theme, joy and justice, came out of the slow food theme from writing our Equity Inclusion Manifesto. And I've been involved in slow food as an organization since 2008. I've been blessed to have gone to Italy for the Terra Madre gathering 6 times. Hope to go again this year, this international gathering of folks from all over the world, every country in the world. But I always say that, but I've been living the slow food life and philosophy my whole life. So out of the slow food is the theme of my month-long journey. But also I'm on the journey wearing different hats, and one of them is the hat of the Ujamaa Seeds. We formed about a year ago as a BIPOC, meaning Black, Indigenous, people of color, BIPOC-led seed cooperative initiative. And our theme is to both raise seeds and then provide seeds in the catalog that we call are culturally relevant. That might mean seeds that are of the African diaspora, or of the Asian diaspora, or of the indigenous diaspora. Those kind of seeds that we brought here with us from the African continent, maybe in an enslaved condition. The women would maybe hide bene sesame seeds in their hair, or okra and things like that. So they would purposely carry seeds with them where they were taken at with the thought, wherever we're going, I want to be able to grow food. So Jama Seeds, again, formed a year ago. We have a catalog of several hundred right now seed varieties. Many of them are the heirloom varieties. And again, folks can go to our website, ujamaseeds.org, place an order. And so I left home with 100 varieties of seeds, 5 of each. Left home with 500 packages of seeds, and it's been my blessed responsibility and experience to take this travel in 25 cities and just give seeds away so folks know about Ujamaa Seeds. And we were also we were greatly helped.
Jim, unfortunately, we are out of time, and I don't want to be out of time. I want to keep talking, but Jim Embry, Joy and Justice. Right? Joy and Justice.
Yes,
wonderful journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, dear.
Have an awesome day
Love
and have
you
a
all.
great
Love
day.
you
Love
all.
you. Love, 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 love. Love and peace.
All right. Bye-bye.
There we go.
All right. There we go.
Jim just all right. Excellent.
All right.
Great. Thank you all.
Oh, Jim's there. There we go. Yeah.
Are you still there? Yeah. I thought that was a great show, so I enjoyed it.